Hello everyone, welcome back to another percussion clinic. This percussion clinic will be all about repairing mallets and making or building mallets from scratch. So mallets are a huge part of the budget in a percussion section next to drumheads. So if you can provide a service of rebuilding a mallet, or even being able to create mallets for your community at a lower price, that's kind of my thinking around a mallet clinic such as this. There's ways of thinking outside of the box when it comes to mallets and percussion. So I hope that going through this, you can fine tune things out of this to fit your community, fit your shop, be able to add stuff into your shop to be able to make more money and services to your shop. So I'm going to be throwing a lot of stuff out there. Some things are very basic and some things will be more advanced to some, depending on your skill level and comfort level. There'll be sewing involved. There'll be wrapping, and I don't want to say knitting or crocheting, but there's going to be sewing, and there's going to be all kinds of different types of techniques that I'm going to cover. And if you haven't printed your handout before this, please make sure you print it out, because it'd be kind of easier to flip along with us, and instead of possibly, unless you got two computers going. But that's what we're going to do. We're going to dive into just about everything mallet wise, more than you could ever want to know or need to know. And after doing this since 1995-ish, I'm still learning about it and messing with it and monkeying with it, and I have fun with it, and all the people that I do things for with mallets seem to appreciate and enjoy this little craft that I'm able to share with them and pass along. All right, so let's look at the first section on our handout, mallet selection. Unwound, wound or wrapped, and core shapes. So let's break these down. Okay, so an unwound is very straightforward. No covering, nothing on the outside of it. And right here, I have an example minus the disc of our shapes. You have the round ball, you have the oval, and you have the mushroom. Okay, and I also have examples here of the three different shafts that will be coming in discussion later, which is the Musser graduated handle, a birch handle, and a rattan handle. Okay, then over here are your wound or wrapped, and what I did is these are the wrapped versions of this. So this is the Musser graduated handle wrapped black ball. Okay. Not graduated, pardon me. The birch handle with the gray medium head, oval, and then the mushroom with the rattan. So there's your unwrapped and your wrapped examples. Okay, the other kind of thing is we'll move over now into materials, and I have some of those over here on this side. So we'll start with the cores and all the different types of cores there are, from solid rubber to solid plastic to hardwood and metal. Okay, so we have a couple different versions here. Let's start with back here, we got the woods back here. So that can be balls, and these are specifically ball knobs. And I give you the links at the back of this handout. I give you the hot links to all the different sources for these. So these are all ball knobs. You don't necessarily have to go to the links I gave you for internet sources, but I gave them to you. But a lot of this stuff can be sourced local. And that's the other kind of big aspect about what I'll be sharing with you, is not everything has to be grabbed from the internet or whatever. I mean, I would say 80% of this stuff you're going to be able to source Hobby Lobby, Michael's, Joann's, any of the good hobby and craft stores, and even the hobby stores that are for RC cars. Some of this stuff you'll be able to get there. Just depends on what they carry, but any kind of hobby related or craft related place is going to have a lot of this. So these are all ball knobs, various sizes from 1 inch all the way up to this 2.5 inch guy I have here. Those would be used in concert bass drum cores and what they call for rollers, for doing rolls on a concert bass drum when you need to do a pair. I've used these even on concert toms in a concert situation. When money was tight and I could not afford a set of puffy, like fur bass drum mallets for marching band, because maybe the drum instructor only wanted a really soft puffy mallet used for 30 seconds in this one particular song, otherwise they weren't used for the rest of the time. It's really cheaper to just make, if you got 4 bass drums, make 4 graduated pairs of bass drum mallets, and we'll talk about how to wrap the fur and things around them. But these are all those kinds of thoughts and things you can do for your clients and for your band directors and things like that when money's tight and they need to stretch, and you can help them out, all those kinds of things. The other woods I have here are all discs. So I have some variations here. This is actual what they call a toy wheel, and the toy wheel comes in various sizes. So that's a toy wheel that can be easily shafted with a 3/8, excuse me on that, with a 3/8 shaft. This is just a disc that I actually sourced these from Office Max. They have what they call a drill press for drilling 3 holes in thick stacks of paper. These wear out. I go grab them from them periodically. You can also buy a big hardwood dowel and cut these off on a power miter saw and do things that way. This is simply just a hole saw through some high-grade plywood as a core. And then these are toy wheels of various sizes. And then this guy here, this would be more for timpani. The smaller toy wheels would be for timpani, but this particular guy here, I use these now and then. And again, that one's only for timpani. This is cork for redoing the handles on fly fishing rods. So they come in a bag and you stack them on the fly fishing pole, and then you sand and profile the handle for the fly fishing rod. And those work great for timpani and some of these smaller ones too, concert toms and things like that. And you can even use these larger discs up to marching bass drum for puffy and things like that. All right, so that covers a lot of the wood, doll heads, and wheels and discs. Moving on, let's talk about rubber and plastic, which I have a mix here, and metal. So these are 1/2 inch solid brass bearings that I get from McMaster Car, and I have the McMaster Car link for different things in the back. I just simply chuck those up in the lathe, drill them, and mount them on the 5/16 shafts. These are purchased, and I'll talk about where I purchased these. I have a source that I shared with you. If you look in the back for Advantage Network, Kevin Lepper Percussion, he has a source with Encore Mallet, and basically these are the Encore Mallet cores that you see. If you go to the hot link that I gave you for Advantage Network, you'll be able to see all these. So, for instance, most of you know what you're paying for mallets. So this core right here, which is the black from Advantage Network, which is an Encore core, okay, you can get that for $1.50. The shaft right here that I just rolled out, you can also buy, and this is an Encore shaft. You can buy that for $1.10. Simply glue them together and you have an unwound mallet, and you make them up in pairs. So there's the cost and things like that you could look at. Like I said, this is all Encore. Down to here, these are a actual tenor or quad head that I had been messing with on the lathe, and it's turned out of this 1.5-inch Delrin stock. Now I've been playing around with those for something that's for tenor. To this next row, we're getting into large gong, wind gong, sound plates, those kinds of things that you would need a heavy rubber mass shaft and head with. So what we got here is we have a standard Slovakian hockey puck, 3-inch by 1-inch. This is a skateboard wheel. I use skateboard wheels a lot. Another thing that I use that I ran out of, I didn't run out and get them, but is an inline skate wheel. They come in packs of 4. Inline skate wheels, they don't have the bearings, they don't have the bearings in them like you get a skateboard wheel, and you can drill them and to the right shaft size. Inline skateboard wheels work great. Inline skates, and skateboard wheels work great. Slovakian hockey puck is the most common. If you ever tear apart a Vic Firth gong mallet, I talked about this in another discussion one time. Yeah, you get these for $1, at least I do, at Play It Again Sports. Some of you in the hockey region, you might be able to get them for free from your local hockey arena. Anyway, that's all the center of a Firth is when you tear it apart. You know, you're paying $30 and up for, you know, a hockey puck and a stick. And then these are just blanks I'm able to get through McMaster, rubber blanks that I can drill and do whatever I need to with. And I just slice them. It comes in a rod like this of rubber, and I just slice them to the thickness I need them. And then down here is where it gets real interesting. This is thinking way outside the box. Okay. These are boat trailer bumpers. So this is for a smaller boat. This one here is, I believe, the bottom. This one's cut in half, so it's the same thing on both sides. But this is for boats too, but I believe this goes in the bottom skis of the trailer for the bottom of the boat to roll on. So these are different rollers. Got these at, actually picked these up at Bass Pro Shop, but any boat shop or whatever would have these. And again, they come like this. I slice it in the middle. You have a pair. And so they're perfectly shaped. And I'll grab one that I mounted just so you can kind of get the idea. There's the idea. So there's the half of that. You see, I have a few of them covered. I can talk about it real quick, but this is in the later segments how you cover them with what is called an underlayment. And that's what these things are here. These are all different densities of fur and different types of adhesive felts, things like that. Okay. So that gets us on materials through the cores. The only last thing is talk about the chime hammer sitting here and the handles I have sitting here. So the chime hammer, this is the exact gray high impact plastic. Again, the link at McMaster Carr is in the back for this, so you'll be able to find it. It comes by the foot like that, and those are 3-inch pieces. And again, like I did the research. This is basically the exact same stuff that Grover is making them out of, and you just cut them. And if you have a lathe that will accept up to 1-inch or 1 3/4 pass through, you can face it really nice. If not, I face them on the belt sander and then do the acetone trick and all that kind of stuff to get them to be smooth and everything like that. And then you see on the other side, this is just a chair skid, 1.5-inch chair skid. I put it on the other side. I believe Balter puts them on the other side. You can put leather. I do a chair skid for a muted chime hammer side. And again, it's just a 3/4 inch, and this one's a 3/4 inch oak dowel I get at Home Depot in 6-foot lengths. They're really cheap. Okay, handles. I mentioned the 5/16 that you can get from Advantage Network. Again, 5/8, 3/4. These are all the common sizes. The only other weird one in between sometimes is a 3/8. I find 3/8 sometimes works best when I'm doing Orff mallets for the little kids, a little easier to hang on to, things like that. And speaking of Orff, this all works for all the Orff mallets too. Okay, the last big guy here is, believe it or not, I saved myself a lot of time and a lot of anguish when I need to do a really, really large gong mallet that is stacked up with 3 hockey pucks. Because gong mallets and things like that, you stack them in different 1s, 2s, or 3s, like you see in my handout in the diagram. Okay. So you get that mass and weight to be able to get that big gong to move. So when you got this much mass, you're going to want a nice heavy shaft or handles. What I'm going down the road to with this is a replacement pruning shear handle, already all shaped and clear coated and everything. And I will bring up the unmodified one so you can see it is a pruning shear handle, and I just lop the top part off. These guys stack on there and you have this heavy mallet. This mallet right here, again, $1 per puck. I get these like here about $5 to $8 depending on when the last batch I was able to get them for $5 a piece. You're able to build this mallet for about $10, and they sell, the larger ones can sell $50. And so just kind of gives you an idea. And again, you have to weigh, you know, the cost and the time and all those kinds of things. But I think that's one thing, but the service that can now be extended to your music community can just really do great things. So that gets us through shafts, handles, all those kinds of great things. I talked about the diameters, the common lengths on this, like I have there, 12 to 16 inches, 12 on the Chime Hammer, most commonly 16, all of the shafts here. And again, birch, oak, maple, and all those kinds of great things. The graduated shafts are fiberglass, all that kind of good stuff. The only thing I don't have here is I don't have any bamboo timpani mallets. All right, in this process, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through how to make the round end or round off the end on the butt end of a shaft. So I have in the lathe 5/8 inch birch for the handle, and this could be a handle for a bass drum mallet, a multi-tom mallet, a heavier duty, shaft and everything like that than a keyboard mallet at 5/16. And how I accomplish this is what I have chucked in right here is a beading tool. So you have a collet or a collar here that holds the cutting die. And these cutting dies and this whole unit I was able to purchase through Amazon. It's a bead maker kit, and I have the 5/8 inch beading die in there right now, minus the drill bits. So there's a drill bit that can be chucked in there for actually drilling the hole through for the cord of the bead. And as you can see here, there are many sizes all the way up to 1 inch diameter. So I have the 5/8 in there right now. I have it all set, and it's just a touch it up. I have it all set at 0 here. I'm touching it up to the die. I have my rubber hose in there to protect from the jaws, just snugging it up. All right, we're going to do our and we're just going to feed in slowly. And depending on how far you go in, depends on how much of a curve you get. If you go all the way to bottoms out, you're going to get a perfectly cut half circle. Or like in the instance of this stick here, you're only probably going to go in half the distance of this to get that flat end like that. So you just play around with it with what you would like to have. And you only have to really follow up with a little bit of light hand sanding when this is all done. So that's about as far as I'd like to go. I'm going to go ahead and back that off. Pull this out for you so you can take a comparison check. So like I said, just a little bit of light sanding, and I'll put the drumstick next to it. A little bit of light sanding and stuff, and you're good to go. Now again, you could spin this slowly by hand on a belt sander. I did that for years until I got the lathe and started doing it this way. So I can sit here and just do one after the other and get a big batch of them done. So there you are. There's how you round over using a beading toolkit from Amazon. All right, now we're going to move on to the section called Underlayment. And I reset everything here to talk about the different kind of underlayments, and then the second part of that second page is wrappings and coverings. All right, underlayments: felt, foam, rubber coverings or rubber dipping, and liquid latex. Okay, so we'll cover each one of these. Okay, so felt. These are sheets of felt that I get that are anywhere from 24 by 12 inch large sheets from McMaster Carr. This happens to be 3/8 to, I think, a 1/2 inch thick on this one. This one's 3/16. Then we have the 9x12 1/8 inch sheets that are peel and stick that you can get at Joann's. And I use a lot of this for the smaller mallets. Okay. So again, the gray products are a McMaster Carr, unless you have an upholstery place in your town, you might be able to get these thicker felts at the upholstery shop. I have there is a gray insulating carpet. The density is a little different, but in a pinch, I was able to use that to get different voicings and things like that too. So there is automotive carpet out there that goes, it's the sound deadening barrier. Anyway, there's the felt options. And as I have pictured here and in earlier parts of the video, this is what we cut and wrap around the cores to change the voicing, change the sound, change the mass, the density, all those kinds of things to achieve the sound that we want. Foam, this is just a peel and stick foam of various thicknesses. This is like a 16th or an 1/8 inch foam. The foam that you can get on a roll at Home Depot for weather stripping. Sometimes that's used. It's just, again, it's mallet building is about what instrument you're playing and what sound you're trying to achieve. And this is where all of that starts to happen. As I said in the beginning, we just covered the core sizes and the core types and all that kind of stuff. The core has a lot to do with the voicing, don't get me wrong, and the shape does. But what you wrap around that is your next layer of voicing. Okay, so felts, foams. Okay, rubber. Now we're to the surgical tubing and rubber hose, all McMaster Carr products or hobby shop. I find most of it in my local hobby shop. I only usually have to order the large 7/8 inch surgical tubing from McMaster Carr, and you can buy it by the foot. So these are the rubber coverings, and as I have over here, here's a rubber covering over that guy. I'll go to the small cam in the corner on this for close up, and then the rubber hose around the yellow to change the voice of it. Okay, so that's what we do with the rubber tubing. Again, the thickness of everything changes the voice. A thicker product is going to get you a deeper, softer, mellower tone, and thinner things are going to get you that higher cutting, a higher tone, higher cut, things like that. Okay. Last is liquid latex. You can get this again at the Joann's or Hobby Lobby. It's a little tub of mold building. It's what they do little molds out of and stuff. It's liquid latex, is rubber. The same thing with your tool dip. You can achieve the same thing with your tool dip, especially, you know, because these are all going to get wrapped. These are not left out for you to just play on raw, because they'll just mark up the keys and all that kind of stuff. This is what you're gonna wrap over. So these are options too for putting layers of rubber on there. And again, I'll hold up a version. Okay, this guy here is not been dipped. That's just a wooden toy wheel. Wooden toy wheel that's been dipped in the mold liquid latex. and you let it dry, and then you dip it again. You keep adding layers the thicker you want it to be. So there's those ideas with rubber and liquid latex. The wrappings and or coverings. All right, so when we're talking about a concert bass drum mallet or a fur or puffy bass drum mallet, about the fake furs. That's what I have here. I have some swatches of fake fur. You basically, I have about 4 or 5. I have one more that's thicker than this. It's really crazy, like leopard fur that a couple people wanted, leopard print, crazy for marching band, and it's really thick pile. So I have some thicker stuff, but this is the most common stuff that I have. And these 3 here are my most common for timpani. Okay, this guy here and this guy here are my most common for concert bass drum. Okay, and color, like this one's like a bluish purple. I got this one because the high school colors, this fell into their high school colors. I mean, that's kind of a sidebar. I'll try to remember to talk about it, but at this point in time, this is where a school can customize their yarn colors to their school colors when they're getting rewrapped. Okay, so those are those kinds of things. So I have this in white and the thicker piles and stuff, but I have it in the white and the kind of tan or beige there. Okay, so the backs. Let me go ahead and flip these. Some are cloth backed, meaning that they'll have a stretch to them. And I'll go up here. This particular one, the grain stretches one direction and not the other. More stretch this way, less, hardly any stretch that way. So when you're cutting and fitting these mallet heads and things that you're going to be making with the fur material, you want to make sure that when you cut it in such a direction where it's going to not stretch as much. So this here, if I was to put this over this ball, this direction is the less stretchy. I'm going to go like this with it over. Okay, so that way when I go and cinch the little drawstring that we'll talk about later, it's getting the highest cinch. If we do it this direction and change it around a little bit, it'll get a little sloppy over time. Okay, and again, mallet making, you play around with it and you figure out some of the directionality of the grain and things like that. Okay, this guy, the back is felt. This stretches all directions. So when I cut this one out, even though I might take the exact measurement of, say, 3 1/4 inches on the ball head, I'm going to really cut it at 3 inches because this will stretch at least that 1/4 inch as I go to cinch it up. So it's making note of those things. Again here, different back on this one. There is no stretch in any direction on this. And then the back is like a felt. It goes all directions. So when you go and look at your material, don't just look at it for the pile or thickness it is. Make sure you look at the back and feel the stretch and the grain and the directionality of it all and everything like that. So you know what you're working with, okay? And remember, when it stretches all different directions, subtract a little bit, okay? Because you don't want that big, huge gather up around the shaft when you go and gather it up. Okay, so there's furs on wrapping covers. Okay, yarn and cord. I got a whole set of yarn and some really like thinner yarn cord crochet kind of. Okay, so these 3 here, I would commonly use these yarns for Marimba mallets, suspended cymbal mallets. Okay, so I have them And if you're able to look at your handout, you got, and I'll grab this guy real quick. I forgot to bring him up. Super bulky. I have fun with him on the large gong mallets. So you got the super bulky that you can use on the large gong mallets, okay, to the number 4 or medium yarns here. So like this one's on the label of 4, okay. And this one's a 3 ounce. And these are all acrylic, okay. So these are all within, these here are all within the medium and light on the scale that you have on your handout. These are all great for, like I said, marimba, suspended cymbal, okay, those kinds of things. These guys here are more of your fine and super fine that will be for vibraphone mallets. So that's this really thin, fine stuff that you can pull tight and get that really nice wrap for a vibraphone mallet. Okay, now that's the weights of the yarns. So these guys here are all acrylic. Acrylic is going to wear the longest. I do use cotton on occasion, but cotton just really wears out fast, gets dirty fast. The acrylic is a lot stronger, lasts longer, all that kind of good stuff. So here's the yarns, like I said, from super bulky to our medium lights to our fine and super fines up here. Okay? So that is your yarns and your cords and your furs. I don't have any out here, but again, terry cloth. I've seen folks, and I played around with wrapping, cutting up terry cloth bar towels or terry cloth hand towels for material, and wrapping in terry cloth type of towels, fleece sweatshirts, old sweatshirts. You can reverse them inside out where the nice puffy fleece of an old sweatshirt is out. You can cut that up and recycle an old fleece sweatshirt. And then even into your felts, like your piano felts and things like that. And piano felt and stuff like that, I gave hot links to all that at Durofelt. Durofelt has all kinds of lovely products for, and they're not paying me to say this, but they got great, lovely products for not only the piano felt for making the timpani covers, but also the hard Durofelt also has these guys, the hard core centers for timpani, and they even have the larger ones for bass drum. So anyway, there's our wrap up on wrappings, coverings, and underlayments. I have the felt chart. We'll start talking about mallet repairs, how I do all that. All right, so we're moving on to the mallet repairs, and basically mallet repairs will evolve into mallet making. So I thought I would take this opportunity to let's talk about tools before we dive in to the actual repairs. So I have here scattered some of my basic tools, and again, we'll just kind of go around the bench here. We'll start with the glues. I have Gorilla Glue here. The Garrett Wade glue is really good. This is for gluing your wood cores back onto the shaft. Any kind of wood gluing application. Okay, this is my go-to, and it's in the hot links. This is the Instacure, and then if you don't have that, the Gorilla super glue works just as good. It just doesn't have the gap filling. And the reason for the gap filling, is a little explanation on that, is if you don't get that hole drilled just right and perfect, it'll fill all the, inconsistencies in the hole you drill. Or in the case of a repair, if you had to drill the shaft out and you maybe open the hole up a little bit bigger, you'll be able to fill those gaps with that Instacure. Purple bottle, gap filling. Going down back here are my actual sewing threads. So I believe it's on the 3rd page or whatever. There's a bunch of supply labels that I put out there. This is a crochet nylon that I use to tie off with for the timpani and the bass drum. Some people actually use dental floss. I use that. And then for different things, I do use heavy duty upholstery threads. So that's what's on the spools back here. Again, felt timpani and different things like that. I'll use the lighter felts and things like that. I'll use the little bit thinner upholstery thread. And I just keep them on spools back here so I can pull them off. Okay, of course, Sharpies and pencils. And I'm going to throw this one out just kind of as a sidebar. This is called a pica ink. If you're not familiar with these kind of changed my whole world from Sharpie. They're refillable, so you can re-ink them. You just take the nut off the end, and you can refill it with ink. And they're deep to where you can get like deep down into holes to trace and mark out things. Really cool pens if you never knew about them. Look into them. I got them off Amazon, reasonable. A lot of the welding supply places sometimes carry them because that's kind of what they're used for, is marking and plotting things out deep down into holes. Okay, so I use a flexible fabric ruler so that I can get all my measurements around the balls and everything like that. Here's a short link of the tubing I use, and this is just a basic tubing cutter from Lowe's or Home Depot for cutting rubber hose or tube. Cuts really easy. I usually cut them right at about 5/8 of an inch to 3/4 of an inch, and as you can see, with minimal effort, it cuts right through that really heavy, thick rubber. Okay, so cutters. All right, swinging down here for the hockey pucks mainly. An 1 1/8 is what is needed for the pruning shear handles. So you have to get everything centered for that. Forstner bits for the 3/4 and 5/8. I use the countersink for the screws and glue that have to be utilized. The screws and glue that have to be utilized, and again, you see how I stack them on the one diagram, the picture. But yeah, this is a glue and screw and line the holes up kind of thing. And I'll dive into that some more. Set these aside. So that's what all the Forstner bits and the countersinks are for. I really like these Weiss heavy duties. I got them at Home Depot. They're like somewhere between 15 and 20 bucks. They're nice and comfortable, and they cut through all this nice heavy fur and fabric and stuff that we do. Roller cutter. I use the roller cutter a lot. I have a roller cutting mat underneath my large soft mat here, which, by the way, this large soft mat is really awesome. sewingmachinesplus.com. Again, they're not paying me to say that, but these are actually sewing machine mats that you set your machine on, and they it keeps the machine from vibrating. Basically, it's like a mouse pad. It's a ginormous mouse pad. It is, well, it's 30, looks like 38 compared to my 38 by like 22. And it's really nice. I can lay instruments on here, all kinds of cool stuff. Anyway, so I have the cutting mat under that for the roller cutter. And then I have these spring-loaded Fiskars. Just with some of the trimming that I need to do and just general cutting. I like the spring-loaded. It's just don't wear my hand out. And these are a cool little one. I gave some links and pictures to some of these different things I got. Center finder. You're going to need a center finder for all these round objects, whether it be the hockey puck or a disc. I'm sure most of you have used a center finder before. Get it in there, mark it, move it 90 degrees, and then I just do a third one, and you have your center. Okay, and then I'll do it real quick with a silver Sharpie, and maybe it'll come up on cam a little better. And then I just do a 90 to that, and then just another one just to be safe. And there we are. So that's where we'll our Forstner bit or hole saw or whatever. So you'll need a finder for those operations. Okay. I have various mallets out here to start repairing. We're going to get through the tool stuff here. Set those aside. Okay, grapple pliers. I use the grapple pliers and stuff to try to twist the old broken off shafts and stuff off and out. And I got my vise over here to my side, and I'll show you that. So my vise, add that cam in, vise, and I have soft jaws for it, the magnetic soft jaws that are, you can see that there's a 45 and straight and stuff on there. They're awesome for holding the balls. So like, oh, let me pick one here. So if I twist that off, I can put it in there and it'll hold the ball nice without marring it up and everything like that. Okay, so we'll get to that on the repair here. Just a little vise with the soft jaws. So there's what we'll do there. Okay, working our way around the table, needles. Your general pack of needles from any of the craft stores, okay, will work just fine. I have a few here that I've modified. I took one of the longer ones from the pack and I put a little bend in it, about a 45, so that I can get up and through and down and through the yarn mallet. And then this one here is McMaster Carr, and I believe this one's in the links of McMaster Carr stuff. If not, you just have to search McMaster Carr for straight needles or spoon needles. I believe memory serves me. One of our local hardware stores, believe it or not, had sail-making needles. That's another thing you can look for. And that's what this one is. This was from when the hardware store, they're no longer in business, but this is a sailmaker's needle. So these are different ones. They're a little bit larger. I tried to look for a little bit larger needle to fit my hand a little bit better. That was the whole reason for that. All right, and then the last thing are all the pliers here. Okay, and I don't mean to be crude or anything about this or cruelty to animals or anything, but these are all veterinarian tools that I was able to find at Tractor Supply or your local veterinarian animal supply place in your town. So again, not the cruelty or whatever to animals and what these tools do to animals, but these tools actually work awesome for what we need to do in mallet preparation and building. Okay, so to be able to get this tubing around some of these mallet heads, you have to stretch them. The larger tubing, you can just, sometimes you can just press it on. It'll fit nice, all that. Sometimes it's not that simple. And you can put a little bit, and you know, you put a little bit of oil on your finger, some lanolin or something like that to get a little bit of a slip. You just don't want to, you know, get a lot. So you don't have to clean it all off, because you got to clean it all off before you wrap the yarn and everything. Anyway, this tool is called an Elastrator, and there's a picture, close-up, good picture of it in your handout. The Elastrator is used on male animal parts. Okay, puts the elastic band on the male animal parts, and as you can see through the motion, it'll stretch this band out. So, for instance, okay, I'll put the band on there, and I'll do it top and bottom. So it'll stretch it out. The little fingers stretch it out. I'll flip it over so you can kind of see both sides. Okay, and I'll turn my other camera on so you can see kind of different view too. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to pop this on, and I'm going to come from underneath. So we'll stretch it out. We're going to come up underneath like that, and we're going to pop it up and through and off those fingers of the tool, and it just gives you enough stretch to get it on. And I know my fingers are in the way, and then you're able to slide it the rest of the way if it's not perfectly correct. Now, why would you even think about putting this on? This is part of the voicing. So if you don't like the sound of this mallet, and let's kind of start talking about that, because we're going to be going into repair, and this is all going to kind of meld together. So I'm going to grab, I made myself years ago. It doesn't have a resonant box or anything like that, but it just gives me a nice, to be able to start listening to the bar and the sound. Okay, so that's with the hose on there. Now I'll walk back here real quick. Now here is the brown mallet without the hose. More staccato, cuts faster. That's a big difference, especially if you start layering yarn on top of that. Okay, and like I said, a lot of these just push on. So this is an Elastrator. It's for stretching that tubing out. Now these guys also pictured small, medium, and large. Those are ear notchers. And what an ear notcher does is I'm going to grab a Timpani. So this is already pre-cut circle for a Timpani mallet. Okay, this is cut out, and let me give you a dimension here. This is just some of that tannish felt. We have a dimension of 3 inches. Okay, so I believe it was this one that I pre-measured. So how did I do this? And again, we're all going around to the ear notcher here. Why we need this and this and this and this, all this kind of stuff. So we came up with the 3 inches. I take my ruler and I touch it against the inside of the shaft. And we bend it up and over the top and back around, and I slipped, and back around to where we touch the shaft, and I'm pushing it in with my thumbnail, and we have 3 inches. So it is 3 inches around and over. Little view. It's 3 inches up and over. Okay. So what that means is if I center this, let me get it here. If I center this here, right over the top, and I draw this all around, it'll all be nice and even against the edge of the shaft. Okay. Now to do that, there'll be a drawstring sewn into that. Now, as I held that up there, you've seen a lot of puckering and a lot of extra material being crammed around with my fingers to that. Okay. Now, what we got to do is we have to cut some reliefs. So to show those notches or those reliefs, I'm going to grab some. These are Vic Firth and Payson Innovative. Pick a mallet, Timpani mallet. We got to cut all those little notches. And before I had learned about ear notchers, I would sit there with little scissors and go nip, 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 nip. Time consuming. Okay. So now I'm going to use the little ones because this is a really small diameter. And I'm going to space these out. Okay. And I'm going to get rid of this one camera view. I think we'll go back to here. And I'll hold her up. And we're going to go in. And bam, there it is. And we're going to space about 1/4 of an inch. And we're going to do that all the way around. Okay. So I'm not going to burn a bunch of time doing that. I kind of pre-did one. Okay, and I used black thread to show you, and I over-exaggerated this one. So hopefully it's a little bit easier to see on cam, and I'll put it on the red here. Okay, and I'll also give you one of those. The drawstrings come out. And the drawstring, this one here comes out, and this one comes out. They don't end in the same one. Okay, they end apart. Now, if you're sitting and it's random each time, or you get off or whatever, don't panic. If they both end on the same tab, yeah, don't panic. Just put them through the same tab and draw it. It'll work. Okay, and you can see just from drawing around my thumb right there what's already happening. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead. I'm grabbing a different mallet. This is the mallet that this one was made for. Now this is where things can get a little tricky. And by the way, before I go and do this, this is the original underlayment of felt that was on this Timpani mallet. It's still in good shape. We're going to reuse it. So here's the tricky part I was getting to, is we have to tie this. So I'm going to get the strings away from me, and I got to balance this. And I've learned to do it with my chin, and pull it. If you have an assistant, this is where the assistant would come in. But this is, before I go and tie that for you, that's what the ear notchers are all about. And the ear notchers go all the way up to really large notches. This is a gogger. So this is a Tom Gogger mallet. This is a cylinder shape, and you see that in your handout a little bit further, page 4 or 5. This is the cylinder style instead of the circle style. And you see the cylinder style diagram. These are 2 drawstrings. You go from tab to tab, but you need to see how large the ear notches are on this. So you'd be using the large notcher on this. So when you take it apart, you want to make sure to pay attention to what notch size. So there's one I took apart to give you an idea of a flattened out one. This gets into sewed together like that. And I'll show that sewing procedure in a little bit. Does this kind of, I know I'm bundling things together, but I need to talk about tools, so I'm just not grabbing them and throwing them in front of you. But all right, let's kind of walk back to tying this off. I'm going to try to do it without getting my bald head too much in the camera. And let me turn the side, let me see if I can get the side camera on for you there. So I have it centered and upside down. And again, see if I can do this without getting, yeah, my bald head's going to get in the way. And it's going to cover the mallet. Okay, so let's come in. Let's go this way. And let's do this. All right. So I'm just leaning down and holding it with the bottom of my chin. Or you can hold it in your teeth. That's another way of doing it. And you draw it all up like that. I need to center it a little better. And I gotta try to stay out of camera for you. And tie this off. A little stretchy. And I'm going to do it in a quickie for you. Quick bow tie off to give you the idea. Okay. I've tried clamping the handle in the vise, but you're doing a bunch of different operations. I've really found, as awkward as it may be, is to get it down there like that and stuff like that. Okay. Gives you a little bit of an idea. I got a couple of points that I need to draw in and work out. So there's that one. I did some pre-ties and I left the black ties sticking out. This one's been worked through and worked on a little bit better. This is the white material, a little bit stretchier. Stretchier is a little bit more friendly with smaller. Like I said, I gotta work these gathers a little bit. And again, I work the gathers with my thumb, okay? And it takes, like I said, it's a little bit of practice, a little bit of stuff like that, repetition. So notching, okay? So let's go ahead and talk sewing. All right, and what I'll do is I'm going to finish notching this one and we'll go into sewing. Okay, and so continuing on, I finished sewing this one here, and again, centering and then pulling tight. Okay, and you might have been able to see that on the side cam, but probably not the overhead cam, so I'm going to try to get out of the way, and as I pull it tight, you see it, and I'll bring it up. Nice fitting. And I'll try this one. There we go. I tried the stomach technique that time. Sometimes you can put the butt end of it in your chest or your stomach like you would do a cork on your bench peg. Okay, so that one drew up a little bit better. Again, there's that one. Okay, so that shows you a little bit, and that was divulging off of the ear notchers. It kind of sided into the ear notchers and into the whole timpani thing, and I apologize but this kind of all intermixes, and so I can get back to I can jump back to the mallet repair. So like if I want to get this guy out, and I'm going to just give it a little twist. This is a rubber ball. Oh, okay. Slipped out on me. I didn't want to over tighten it. I always play on the safe side. So I'll give it a little bit more. And again, Grapple Pliers. Okay. And it's broke off. Not a big deal. All right. I'm going to get my needle nose. I'm going to grab my needle nose and see if I can pull some of the wood out. All right. So again, this stuff is savable. This might, some of you might not, agree with saving all this stuff. And it's like, why, when some of it's so cheap like you say it is? But, if they need this stuff now. So what I did is I grabbed an 1/8 inch drill bit. And I got a little starter hole down the middle there. Now I'm going to get a 9/32, just one step smaller than the 5/16, which was the original hole. And then I'm going to bore the rest of the wood out. Okay. So you guys seen how much wood shaft was up in there? All cleaned out. New shaft. Get some more glue again. Reglue it. We're back in business. Okay. Same thing with this bell set. Bell set came in. They were snapped off like this. This one I did off camera. Same way. I twisted the off. Some of it came off. I drilled it out. These were all broken, just like this. New shaft. Okay, so let's talk about glue. So I'm going to grab some of my gap filler. And how I do it is I put it on the shaft, not down in the hole, so we don't have a hydraulicing situation. So I put a bead of the gap filler around the edge right there, not down the whole length, because when you push it on, it's going to smear it and push it down into the hole as you do it. So if I got a little bit extra on there, I literally take it like this. I take it at about a 45-degree angle and I wipe it off down in the hole. Any extra, I would just kind of wipe it off down in the hole. And then it's a push and a twist with the gap filling. Push and a twist, because you're moving that gap filling glue around. Push and a twist. See, it's already bonded. So kind of like PVC pipe glue, where you have to and give it a little twist to get a nice bond and doing PVC pipes together. Same way with a hard plastic. Done and on there. Rubber, same thing. Okay, so we're all clean. Oh, there's a little piece of wood right there. Little shaving. I'll make sure to pull that out of the way. Same thing. Put the glue on the shaft. So you can buy the shafts from and twist. I didn't wipe it. I didn't wipe any off on there because I didn't have a ton on there. So there we are. And you just lay them off to the side, let them dry. So you can buy the shafts from already made and done from Advantage Network. I think I said $1.10 or $1.50. You can look it up on there. Or you just cut them 16 inches and do them. So like this guy here. So yarn. You're not going to be able to save the yarn. So you just cut it off. I just go right down and through the middle with a removal. Once you get it, see it, boom. And this one was actually double wrapped. Very interesting. This one was double wrapped. Okay, and then I'm going to go after the crown right here of this double wrap. So what they double wrap this for is this is a much harder cord in the center. So they wrapped it with a hard cord to voice it. So this is probably an older mallet that I had laying in my junk drawer. And this was before the whole thought or evolution of let's put rubber hose under there to change the voicing. So anyway, that's the idea, is you're going to strip it all off and get it down to a ball, and you're going to put a new shaft on it, rewrap it. Okay. Now, what about a couple of other examples I can show you? All right, so I pre-did this one. This was a Musser fiberglass stair-stepped handle like this, okay, and it snapped off. Same thing, I take an 1/8 inch drill, drill the fiberglass out, open it up, and there you are. Rewrap it. This red that's on here is actually the yarn that was kind of semi-pounded and melted from friction and impact into the rubber. And then the last little one here, I've been saving this guy here for something just like this. Some of the companies, when you go to remove it and repair it, some of the companies, there used to be a point in time before glue technology got, really good. This is a much older one where they stick a brad nail. They stick a brad nail at a 45-degree angle. So they put the brad nail gun this way and shoot the brad nail through the wood shaft into the rubber to keep it from wanting to fly off when they're playing. Because, glue is questionable sometimes. So again, a short twist, and then actually pretty awesome. The nail stayed in there. So that's helping give, a good grab. And then it's just a matter of, again, I'll grab another. I have a bunch of new shafts right off here to my right. And you re-glue it and reshaft it. And you can sit and do batches of these relatively quickly. I don't want to say this is good stuff to do when you have downtime, because I know downtime is all relative, or slow time. I don't want to be rude or anything, but I mean, when you have those moments in time in your shop and you got a bunch of these laying around, you could redo them and back out there as rebuilt mallets, So anyway, think about how you can make it work for your community. Reach out to me if you want any more information and things. Going to move along. So I'm going to set these repair mallets. Okay, so to kind of wrap up Timpani, which is these guys, and I showed you how to cut and use the ear notcher. The last little bit of follow-up that I want to do is, like, here's the piece of material, how I went about that. I showed you that I measured with my ruler, and I got 3 inches. Okay, so what I do, and I forget which page on your handout it is, like 4 or 5. Okay, so I make a template, and that's what I show you on the handout. So I have a whole slew of templates that I've accumulated over the years, and I label them. And I'll bring those over at this point, just kind of give you an idea. So here's my templates. And I label them. Like, this is a Vic Firth MB1-S. This is for recovering the marching band puffy mallet. So I label them over the years of what they are and their diameter. Here's a 5 1/2 and a 6 1/4. Again, a Vic Firth. Here's a Gogger. You know, so you can make your templates and everything like that. So I'll pull a 3 out here, 3 1/4 that'll fit on this material. So you kind of get you get the idea. So you make your template of your diameter and just simply do the normal thing, trace it out and cut it out. This is where those heavy duty Weiss scissors do a really awesome job. So that's how I go about coming up with the template, measurements, and transferring it to the material. Okay. All right. So now at this point, going to have a little chuckle here. You guys are going to probably cuss at me on the camera now. All right. So what I have here is the aftermarket store-bought stuff. So after I just showed you how to make all this stuff and do all this and cut and ear notch and all that stuff, you can go and you can order these. I got these from Steve Weiss. These are already made with the drawstring in them, for all sewed in, all ready to go. Timpani felt, $14 for a pair. So you don't even have to do all the stuff that I just showed you, and that's why I say you're probably screaming at me now. Well, why didn't you start with that? Well, I wouldn't be a percussionist if I didn't show you how all this stuff works. But here's the thing that will probably work for 90% of you, and that is you could order these, have these ready, and literally just take them. And this is the Vic Firth that this goes to, and go and pull the drawstring and do it. I don't want to do that with these, but you get the idea. You can buy them, done. And again, I gave you the links for aftermarket stuff on Steve Weiss and all that kind of stuff for Firth, and I think I did the innovative one, but there's some Payson ones. Check out the Steve Weiss website. But again, you can buy these. They're already made, already done. Okay? And again, this is another way. You charge them for the part, charge them for the labor. You know, it's gonna be close. Anyway, again, lots of decisions to make on how this can or cannot work for you. I just want to give you the information. Okay, last little follow-ups on Timpani for you. What I have here in my hand, talk about voicing or cleaning up voicing the mallet by freeing up the felt. This is just a cork with 5 straight pins. Push through it. And it helps It helps prick the felt. It's a piano technician trick that I was showed, and I've seen it in a lot of different percussion clinics and things like that on timpani, is voicing the felt by pricking it. You can change the sound of it. With the fur, you can lift the nap of the fur up with it. Gets it to fluff up and be softer. But there's also times that the timpani mallets come in all frayed because the kids like rubbing them on things or just being silly with them. And you just use your spring-loaded scissors to just give it a nice, smooth haircut. And I'm basically showing that it's not like you're going to be tending to mallets, but let's say they come in. The felt might still be good. They just might need to be trimmed. Okay? And so you might not have to, they bring you in a bag of mallets, you might just have to give it a nice trim and get it like that, get it all back. Okay. The other thing you can share with your band directors, and this is more of a hack than it is a repair or anything, or it's kind of a repair, is I learned this at Boise State. This is those little footy socks that you can get at the shoe store for trying on shoes. Anyway, let's say you got one that's just crazy and you get it all trimmed and everything. You can put the nylon over it. You can stretch the nylon over it, get the tip of it, get the toe or tip of the nylon. You give it a twist, and you simply take a rubber band and rubber band it off. And this gets a lot more mileage out of these for your band director. And then you just take the excess with your cutters and cut right up next to the rubber band. And if they have that band director has a lot of kids that constantly rub them and fray them or whatever, the nylon sock trick does pretty good on keeping that fraying down to a minimum. Now they can rub them or whatever. And so there's a little hack trick that I'll throw out there too. Okay. I think we're good to move on. The only last repair was, like I said, this needs to be wood glued. And we would just do the same thing. We would wood glue the tip of this up and let it set. And since it's wood glue, it would need to set. Now this was the cover, and even though it's dirty, this cover is still good. This is what was on here. Okay, when the glue broke, it broke the drawstring that we sew, that I just showed you how to sew. We sew that, we sew a new one. So we have to turn it inside out. And when you turn it inside out, what it reveals is all the cool stuff that you do. You sew this on the sewing machine or by hand. This is that one diagram that's on page 5 or 6. Okay. You sew it together, and then you sew your drawstring on the top and on the bottom. So this is recyclable. If you're like weirded out by the dirt, I'll just go hand wash this with some Woolite, and it'll clean it all up. Let it let it air dry, and this is totally reusable. It's not ripped, it's not extremely worn. It's just for some reason when it popped off, it probably snagged the cord just right and broke it. But this is totally sewable and redoable. We're going to move on, and we're going to start talking about how to make one of these elongated or tubular covers. Okay, I'm going to make one for this bass drum mallet. This is just a felt core, and we're going to put the fur around it. Okay, so we got to get our measurement, and we're going to go around it this time. Instead of getting our measurement like on our Timpani mallet to do the sock that goes all the way over like that, we're only going to get a half measurement. So we're going to go from here to here, which is 3 inches. Okay, so that gets us that measurement. That's going to be around the mallet that way, so 3 inches. And then around the mallet total this way is 7.5 plus seam allowance. So seam allowance able to go together as it's illustrated in the handout. So our actual measurement is 7.5, and we want to add a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So a quarter twice is a half. So 7.5. We're going to do 8 inches. So this mallet's going to need a sock or a tube that is 3 by 8 inches. All right, so we're going to make that measurement. I have a square edge here on my bluish material. So 3 inches on my ruler. I'm going to go ahead and make a mark, Sharpie mark. 3 inches. And connect. Okay. All right. Now by 8 inches was our seam allowance and everything. Double check. Yep. All right. 8 inches. Bam. And we're going to cut the selvage off here. All right. So you can roto cutter this. You can roto cut it on the cutting mat, or you can use your heavy shears. Okay. All right. And there we are. Square it up. There we go. All right. So we have our piece. So I have one here. Okay. This is not for this one, but I have a demonstration one here. So the next thing we got to do before we actually sew it, and we're going to be doing this all inside out, is we want to sew these. You want to sew the drawstrings in. Okay? So we will sew the drawstrings in, and again, it's going to be that up-down motion. And see, once we get our drawstrings in, then I'll reset inside at the sewing machine real quick. We'll sew that and all that kind of good stuff. So now I'm going to get it set up to sew drawstrings, and I'll cut the drawstrings and all that kind of good stuff, and I'll show you to get it started, and we'll go from there. Okay, so I cut 2 equal pieces of the thread, the nylon thread. Okay, so we want to have our pull cords on the outside. So you start on the outside. You're going to go about a 1/4 inch in, like you see on the, about a 3/16 to a 1/4 inch right from the edge, like you see here on the little demonstration piece. We're going to start on the outside, and we're going to do about 1/4 inch apart. And remember to leave your seam allowance. You're a 1/4 inch away for your seam allowance so you don't sew over this. Okay, so now I'm going to pull this all the way like it's going to be the drawstring right there. And then about 1/4 inch gap. Just weaving the stitch all the way down, back and forth. Now I can pick it up, and here we go. All right. All right, we have one side sewn. We're going to do the other side, and then we'll reset inside, and we'll show the actual sewing on the sewing machine of how we close this up, and then we'll show how it goes on. Okay, here we are at the sewing machine. We sewed and cut this to prepare it. We got to now sew the edges together. So we're going to go good sides together. So what we want to do is we want to tuck these pull strings into the middle so that we don't accidentally sew them into the middle. So they're out of the way. So now we're going to bring it together. Two sides together. All right. Again, making sure everything's tucked out of the way. We have our seam allowance and our edges together. All right. So we're going to buzz this through right on the edge, and we're going to make sure that we back stitch. Okay, so now we're just going to take our scissors and we're going to trim the rest of the threads off, making sure that we don't accidentally trim anything else. Then I'm going to go ahead and turn it inside out to check our pull cords. We're loose, that we didn't accidentally sew anything there. All right, they're all free. So I'm going to turn it back inside out because we need to trim up this edge a little bit because we don't want a lot of bulk when we go to lay this on the mallet. So we'll go back out into the shop. Okay, so we came back out to the shop. We finished sewing it, so we need to trim the bulk off the edge. Here's the one earlier I was talking about. You want to make sure that this is nice and straight and that there's not going to be any kind of weird bulk that is puffing it up and puffing the mallet up in one spot. So I just want to make sure it's nice. I'm just cutting it nice with the, and then the last thing I do to make sure, and I just a little bit of a 45-degree on the corners here, right there. Okay, and we're going to go ahead and invert it. We checked our cords in the house earlier before we came back out. Everything was good. and this was the mallet that it was going to be used for. Okay, so we'll go ahead and we'll slip it all back in here. Just pull it on over. Just a big long tube sock, kind of pulling it down, and you're just going to kind of get it centered, half to the top, half to the bottom. And I start by pulling the bottom closed, and then that way I can pull the top into a nice neat. So again, I'm going to pull it closed right here. You can kind of see it. Pull it closed here. I see a string. Get rid of that. All right, so we got a nice closure here. I'll go ahead and put the first knot in. And what's nice about this nylon pull string is it'll slip a little bit on the second knot so that you can get it down and cinch it down, and it'll stay and it won't jump on you. And then usually the third and the fourth one locks it in. Okay, give it a trim. I leave them about a 1/2 inch so they don't back out of each other. All right, so there's the bottom. And so now what I'm doing is I'm just kind of smoothing, and I'm pulling towards the top. Here's our seam, not a lot of bulk. Okay. I'm going to grab our little trimmers because we're going to need those for any wild hairs. Then we're going to go ahead and close the top up. So here's the top. Usually do it right between your legs and hold. Oop. And here we go. Bring it nice and closed. You can just see the wood shaft. That's where we measured it to the edge of the wood shaft. You could have added an extra 1/4 inch when I measured and completely closed it out, but I thought since the shaft was there, it would just kind of be cool because it's all finished handle and everything. Put all of the knots into it, and again, leave about a 1/2 inch or so and trim it off. Okay, and we go to that. So now this is where these guys come in. I'm going to make sure that the top is nice and flat and sculptured. Same around the bottom. So I did the top, nice and sculptured. And around the shaft, around the bottom. Being careful not to nip the strings off that you left so they won't unravel. And then where the seam is if there's some funkiness where the seam is, just kind of hit it with the nippers. And then what I do is I do this between my hands, and that helps fluff it all out evenly so that you can see it. And there we have it. Turned out pretty well. Covered bass drum mallet. That's the tube style, like this. Different from the circular style that we did earlier. And again, Timpani felt, for any of these materials work in either format of how you need to close them. All right, everybody, thank you for joining us for another percussion repair clinic. I hope you have a lot of takeaways from this, things to think about for your shop, what can work and what cannot, and all those kinds of great things. Don't be afraid to reach out to me if you have any further questions about things or need a little bit of extra time talking one-on-one. Again, thank you, and reach out to NAPBIRT. My book's available there, and we'll see you at the next percussion repair clinic. Okay, so we're really zoomed in, and we're going to talk about yarn wrapping. Okay, yarn wrapping, some people take right to it, and some people get real frustrated with it. So, you know, it takes practice, as with any new technique, anything like that. Be patient with yourself and be patient with it. And we're just going to kind of get started. You'll see the wrap motion reference chart as to how I'm doing this, and I'll try to reference it as far as like 12 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 9 o'clock, what I'm doing and how I'm rotating left or right. My suggestion is to start with something big. So I picked up one of my gong mallets that was made out of the boat bumper. So I need to put an underlayment on it. I'm just going to show you how I do that real quick. Take the measurement around with your ruler, and in this case it's 9.5. I just went around the perimeter of it, and it's 9.5. I go to my adhesive. This is the voicing I want for it, just the really basic. This is the adhesive peel and stick from Joann's. I'm just going to peel it off, and it's 9.5, and it's a 1/2 inch wide for the dimensions for you. So I'm just getting that top edge. So there we are. And the adhesive, just push it all on real good. You can give it a roll. All right. So we're all on there. We're good to go. And I'm going to use white. I wouldn't normally use white on a gong mallet because they get dirty quick because they're laid around and all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to use white so that you can hopefully see things better on the black rubber. So first thing is you got to tie it off around the bottom of the shaft. So just a simple square knot, tie off on the bottom of the shaft. I also gave you a list of knots and things that I also use in the handout. And I'm just going to nip this off. Okay, so I make sure to push that knotted up against the bottom. All right, so I'm holding the shaft in my left hand, and I'm going to wrap with my right hand. If you're the other way around, just switch your hands around. Okay, so my left hand is on the shaft, and I'm wrapping the wraps with my right hand. The amount of wraps for a gong mallet, you're going to be somewhere in the 200 to 300 possible wraps. On a Marimba mallet, suspended cymbal mallet, you're somewhere between 100 and possibly 125 wraps. And it all depends on the thickness of yarn you're using. So that's why I have that marimba bar, or I have an instrument nearby that I can play on to just kind of get an idea. So the shaft comes up right here in the center. Okay, and I'm trying to make sure that this is all on cam too. We want to make sure that this center stays open. Get rid of this label. Okay, there we are. Want to keep this open because when we're done, we're going to need a hole to plunge the needle through to wrap the crown. Okay, so we're going to need to wrap the crown. And there's a picture in your handout of a finished wrapped version of this in green. Here it is. And that's what I mean by the crown, that donut looking thing that is sewed on top. And I'll flip it over on the little cam. There's a donut around the handle on the bottom. So that's what the finished product starts, looking like. Okay. You're welcome to count wraps. I just, I count like the first 100 or so and start seeing where I'm at. So the first wrap, so I'm holding the shaft. I'm using my thumb in my left hand to hold the yarn. I'm going to go up, and from my view, I'm going to go up and to the left, and I know the camera is showing it backwards, but I'm going up and to the left of the center shaft. And then I'm going to go down and around the back here. So to the left, down around the back, and to the right of the shaft underneath. Okay? And I'm going to try to do it from underneath. And then I'm going to cross over. So I'm twisting as I come over like this. I'm twisting the mallet to the right. It's crossing over on the left. I'm going down and I'm a slight clock twist. So to 12 on the left side, under on the right side of the shaft, giving it a twist this way, as you can see. Twist this way and over. And we have our first crossover. Twist again to the right, cross over. Twist again, cross over. I'm doing like 1/2 inch gaps, 3/8 to 1/2 inch gaps between each. And this is why I suggest starting on something large for your first wrapping project. And if you're of a certain age, you may remember a game called Spirograph. This is similar to that in that you're making that kind of grid with yarn. And there's even the yarn craft where you connect yarn to nails in a pattern. And so you just keep your skein of yarn to where you're pulling it out. There's my white. And I'm just pulling it out as I need it. And you start building it up. And you just start getting in a flow. So I'm going over to the left, coming back under on the right, over on the left, and a twist on each. And I start filling in the gaps. You start filling in the gaps. And then you can start to see why we need that middle. That's what we're going to sew shut. Overlapping. Pull some more out, and I'm trying to make sure that I'm staying on cam and looking at my monitor and looking at a mallet and looking at a monitor. And if I forget to say anything at the beginning on the introductions, if we need to stop and pause and discuss this a little bit more, pause the video and discuss, we can do all that. Just let me know through the chat. And again, I'm just filling in my blanks. And I think you're kind of getting the idea. This is probably about a 20 to 30 minute for a beginner. I can probably wrap this one, voice it, and everything in about 15 to 20. I can usually do a pair of marimba mallets in a half an hour, you know, so that's the way I kind of start, you know, once you get at it, you know, how much time it takes. And then, so you just start filling the gaps and it starts building up. So I'm gonna do a temporary tie off, and a temporary tie off is just rolling it around the shaft like that. You see the other ones over here temporarily tied off. Okay, so I'm going to set that aside. All right, so I have marimba mallets in various stages here. So here is this marimba mallet, just barely started. And let me see if I can show it up overhead too. And this louder color, I'm just using it to try to be camera friendly. Although I have done some loud colors like this for schools. They love them. But hopefully you can see that pretty good. And again, the diagram is on your handout. Okay, so I am unwinding my temporary, and I'm going to go ahead and unwind this. So you notice there's a black Sharpie dot, because these are a set of mallets I use for teaching and training my kids at school. So put yourself a little Sharpie dot about the size of a pencil eraser in the middle of your, so you have something to kind of shoot for. On this mallet, you had the shaft that poked all the way through. Okay, so here we go again. Since this one's smaller, I'm gonna keep it right here. And again, checking my cameras. All right, so over to the left, under to the right, and turn. Over to the left, under to the right, and turn. And you start repeating. Okay, I'll go back. Left, right, turn. Left, right, turn. Left, right, turn. Left, right, turn. Repeat. Keep your black Sharpie mark open. And now that we've made pretty much a full lap around it, you start filling in your gaps. Okay, temporary tie off. This next one takes you a little bit further. Okay. And this one is here, and this one has 100 wraps on it. And so now this one, and let me come up here, this one's got 100 wraps on it. I would put more, but I want to start talking about sewing. We got to sew this off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some more wraps to this one and get it to the point of sewing. You can see where I've started the sewing right here. Okay. So I'm going to put some more layers on this other one real quick, off cam, and then come back and talk about sewing. All right, I'm back, and I grabbed a few more things and put them on the bench here. So I've wrapped this guy like I said, and we're back. I grabbed a couple other ones that I've wrapped before, and I grabbed my bar because we're at the point now where if I want to add more layers or even subtract some layers of yarn that I put on this, I want to start hearing what it sounds like and establish the one mallet, because once you establish this mallet and you tie it off and it's done, that's the voice it's going to be. So when you make its mate, you have to start testing it, and that's where counting and kind of keeping track of your wraps is one thing, but your ear is going to tell you ultimately, because you could be 20 wraps one way or another and it could be a little different, but it might sound exactly correct when you're mating the pair. Okay, so here's just a little example of the difference between these two. Obviously the white one has more wraps, so it's softer. These all have the same core inside, the same rubber core. Okay, so now here's this one. To me, that's still a little harsh. So I'm going to add about 20 more to it. I'm at about 120 right now. I'm going to add a little more to it. And as I'm adding, I want you to be able to take notice too of how I've been keeping my hole. If your hole starts to get closed, just simply take the other mallet and use the butt end to help hold it open, or push it open, I should say, or the eraser end of a pencil or something like that. So I want to put about 20 more on this and see where we're at. 3, and I'm just filling in my gaps to make sure that the sides are nice, and I'm going to use my fingernail. I got a couple strands over there. So I'm filling in the gaps. I'm making sure that my sides are nice and have a good profile to them. Okay, so I'm going to temporarily tie that off. We should be close there. That's the difference. I like that. It's a little bit mellower. Okay, so we're going to go with that. All right, so we've established our voice. We found what we want, and we want to lock it in by sewing. So you want to make sure that you have a good, 3 feet of yarn. Okay, you want a good 3 feet of yarn or so. You don't want to run short of yarn. Okay, so I'm going to set it down, and I'm going to use my bigger needle, my bigger yarn needle, and this one has just the slight spoon bend on it right there. And that spoon bend is what helps you get down in that hole and dig out. Okay, so here's where you have to unwind it, and you're going to hold your last wrap that comes down underneath right here. You're going to hold it with your thumb as you unwrap, so you don't completely unravel it. So there it is. I got it held. Now I'm going to take my pointer finger and I'm going to hold it. It happens to be pink in this wrap. So now I'm at the top. So where that pink right here, where that pink comes up to the top, I'm going to now move back from the hole with the tip of my needle. Okay, I think I'm going to need to do it here. Matter of fact, I think I am going to need to probably just do this. There we go. All right. So there's where the pink comes up. I'm going to go just below, about a 1/4 inch below the hole on the side. I'm going to plunge into the center. And then I'm going to rotate down until I push the tip of that needle up and out. There it is. This is where the curve of that needle helps you. Okay, so I'm going to go up, and this is going to lock that first stitch in where you can let go of that pink. Okay, so I'm pulling it up and through right there. So now we have it locked in with the first stitch. So now what you're going to do is you're going to do a loop stitch, a loop stitch. So you're going to come out and over and up. Okay. And here's what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to ultra zoom in. There we are. Okay, so I'm going to try to stay in one spot. So right here's the first stitch. I'm going to go right alongside it, up and out. Right alongside. I'm going to the right side for directionality for you. And to the right again. And if you follow this all the way around, side by side by side, you're going to end up with that donut all the way around. Okay, so you're going to end up with a donut all the way around. I hold the white one up here. I'll hold the green one up here. You're going to end up with a donut all the way around. Again, going side by side by side by side. No gaps between stitches. Okay. So now I'm going to go off cam. And I'm going to show you how we get down and do the bottom. Go side by side by side. I'm going to pause it. Okay, we're back. We have our donut all the way around and our yarn is right up through the center. Okay, so now we got to get the yarn down to the bottom. So instead, we're going to go through the center, not on the outside this time. We're going to go through the center and we're going to pop out part of the way down. So kind of in a reverse direction exactly of what you just sewed the crown in. Yikes. Sorry about that. Okay, and you're going to pull it. So now rotate it around. Bring it around. Now I'm going to flip it to the bottom. Same thing, except for you're going to go to the side of the shaft. So you're going to, from the side right here, about a 1/4 inch down, you're going to use the curve of that needle to find the side of the shaft, and there it is poking out right there. So I'm about a 1/4 inch down right here, going in at an angle and out the side right there. Okay, so now you're locked in on the bottom. So now what you're going to do is you're going to go right back where you came from and make your first loop. There's your first loop right there. And you're going to go side by side by side, except for you're going to go side by side along the wood shaft. And these can be more spaced out. They don't have to be exactly side by side by side. You can have a little bit of gap in this, or you can have it nice and tight. The bottom is not as critical as the top, because the top can bang into the edge of a key, the edge of a cymbal, where the back by the shaft, it's more protected. You want to get a good crown on the front because it's out there in the danger zone of the edge of keys or the key posts, you know, that could hit things or whatever. So I'm doing a little bit wider. I'm doing a little bit wider myself right now, and for demo. There it is. A little bit wider. Okay, so I got 2 more stitches to get around completely. 1 and 2. Okay, so now we're ready to tie off for good. So now, just like we did on the top, we're going to go down alongside the shaft and reverse it back out. And we're going to go up to the top and we're going to bury the stitch. So now we're going to come back up to the top and we're going to go in and out the center again, like we originally stitched the crown on top, in about a 1/4 inch down, out the center of the top. We're going to go in once, and then we're going to go 90 degrees of where we went in, and then we're going to go out. Okay? Good. We're going to go out. Okay? Now, we're going to pull it tight. We're going to pull it tight, and we're going to grab our scissors. And we're going to pull it, not like mega, but we're going to pull it tight enough that when I snip it really close right here, I'm going to snip it really close right here, it's going to jump inside and disappear. Bam, gone. Okay? All right, let's go ahead and widen back out. And then we just make its mate. We make its mate, and we add and add until it sounds the same. Okay? That's mallet wrapping and sewing of a marimba mallet, suspended cymbal mallet, these guys, and then wrapping of a gong mallet, even up to a big hockey puck size. That's the basic. I know I verbalized a lot of instructions and things that are not outlined in there. All of the instructions are outlined in my book. So get a hold of that. Grab the book, and it's got all the further detailed instructions on what to do than what I can verbally go through in the time we have. And again, reach out to me with questions. I also don't want to forget about these guys, the multiple use stick, whether it be tom-tom or snare drum, to immediately having to switch to suspended cymbal. Okay. I showed how to drill these on the lathe. Okay, so we've moved over here to the mini lathe, and I'm going to show you how to go about making this connection and drilling the hole to make this multi mallet. So this is like a 5A, 5B drumstick that I'm going to drill with the lathe. I'm going to drill 1 inch deep. The 3/16 shaft is going to be 3 inches long, and we're going to make it to where we can mount this and wrap it. So we have a multi-purpose stick and mallet to use. Here we go. Everything's set at 0, so I can do my depth of cut down to 1 inch, just slowly feeding it in. As you may be able to see as it's turning, I have some rubber hose around the outside of the stick to protect the jaws from marring the stick. We're almost there on my gauge here. So 1 inch. Right there. We'll go ahead and back it out. The hose stays in place so you can run multiples, and there we are. Little off center, but it's going to still work just fine. This happens to be a Firth 5B. So that's how you go about doing that. Then you just glue the core on there and wrap it like we discussed in mallet wrapping. So multiple. Okay. The only other follow-up on this is heat shrink tubing. I put it around there for grip, but it also strengthens this joint, even though you've used wood glue and everything, from wanting to split. It just helps assist because you've thinned everything up as far as the wall thickness and things. So it just kind of helps that. So there you are. But again, you're going to put the 5/16 shaft in there, 3 inches long, put your mallet core on there, and then wrap it, just like we showed wrapping. And then to reinforce and give some grip and reinforce it, 6-inch pieces of heat shrink tubing and heat shrink on there for those purposes. Okay, a little other side note that I do with all my repairs and building of mallets, no matter what it is, gong or keyboard or whatever, is I have a old school stamp that has my business name on it. It's 2 inches long by 1/4 inch, just the old school rubber stamp, and I just have my name Moss on it and manufacturing, and I just take and I stamp the shaft, and they know that it was redone by me. That way, you know, people ask, word of mouth, the whole advertising thing, and you know, stamp, get your name around. I mean, innovative and everybody else does it. So if you're fixing them and redoing the shafts and stuff on them, put your name on them so they know where to come get them fixed again. All right, what I have here now is, this is the early version of how I drilled the holes in the McMaster car balls before I had a lathe. I came up with my own little jig for centering and doing the balls. So just basic drill press vise, soft jaws with the hose still around them, just like I did in the lathe. But what I have here is, this is a piece of acrylic so I can keep an eye on what I'm doing. You could do it with a piece of wood or whatever, but it's about 1.5 inch by 1.5 inch piece of acrylic. Again, piece of wood will work just fine too. But it's a 5/16 through hole, dead center of the cube. And then on the other side is a countersink. So I would just drill through, and then I made the big countersink with the countersink bit. The countersink helps center the cube on the ball. So I clamp the ball in there to where it's just proud of the top to fit in the countersink. As you can kind of see, I can roll it up and over that. And that indexes it right there. Okay? So you slide this up and on. I have the depth on a piece of tape here. You bring everything and get it all set and lined up. It's all indexed and everything. You just lightly hold the block, slow speed on your drill press, and you drill until we get to the red tape. Centered on the ball. Okay, we have ball contact. Stop just a little short, just to be safe. Check our and there we are. A nicely centered 5/16 hole. You pop the stuff off and we're good to go. So that's how this little centering jig works. That was all before I got a lathe, and it worked. It served me well. So I just thought I'd show that as an example of something you could make if you don't have a lathe and still get the job done. Okay, we're back at the mini lathe again, and what we're going to do now is show how I take a undrilled plastic or Delrin ball, and this is a McMaster car ball that you can buy, and drill it again 5/16 for the shaft. It's a 1 inch diameter, and I have everything set at 0 and all set to plunge. And I'm going to go in 5/8 of an inch. There we go. I still have rubber hose around the outside of the ball to hold the jaw, just nice and slow into our plunge. Backing it out to clean it out a little bit. Almost there. And there we are. Nice and centered. And again, this is just some neoprene hose that I use for the outside and not marred up, ready to glue on. Again, just a simple McMaster car ball, instantly turn into a mallet. This would work really good on xylophone and bells. And there you are. All right, I'm going to show how we drill our hockey pucks or our wood discs. Again, I talked about bits earlier, hole saw or Forstner bit, whichever diameter, 5/8, 3/4, or 1 1/8 for the larger ones. I'm going to do a 2-puck demonstration. A third puck would just be another through hole. So I'm going to drill a through hole completely through this one, and then on this one I'll drill halfway through, only the thickness of the Forstner bit itself. And again, if it was a third puck, we would do a second puck drilled all the way through. So here we go. We did our center finder with the silver Sharpie. And we'll check, clear off our debris. All the way through. Okay, so there's all the way through. So again, if we were doing a 3-puck, we would do a second one all the way through. The top puck is only halfway, and we're only going to go the thickness of the Forstner bit. Okay, we're only going to go the thickness of the Forstner bit. And stop. Clamp her down. We're almost there. Just the thickness right there where you see the top of the bit. Right there. That's all we want. Part of the way through, halfway through. That's drilling them, then we'll go to assembly. All right, we just finished at the drill press. Come back over here to the bench, and let's talk about how we finish these. All right, so here's the single puck version right here. Again, it would be drilled halfway through like I did over at the drill press, and you have to drill an 1/8 through hole for the screw and the finish washer to grab it all. So that's what we got to do here. I have dry fitted all together, and I have indexed them so that they go back the same after the dry fit. Okay, so everything works good. Now, we've got to drill that through hole. I'm going to put everything back. Everything's good to go. Take this top one off. Now, the Forstner bit left just a slight tip in there, which is always awesome. So 1/8 inch drill. Just going to hand eyeball it. Okay. All right, so now I'm going to line up my index marks. I'm going to put it back on there. Okay. Now I'm going to go over here to my, I have the jaw savers there. I'm going to gently, now what I'm going to do over here is I'm going to drill down into the wood shaft through that 1/8 inch hole. Okay, let me see if I can get that a little more on camera for you. There we are. So I'm going to go straight down. Straight down and through. So now we have a nice through hole. Okay, the next thing is we need to go ahead and commit gluing this. So the gap filler will bond the rubber really well. So like I said, I've dry fitted all this and I have it indexed. It's all good to go. I'm going to take just the top one off. Take some of my gap filler here, and I'm going to go around the rubber and up over the wood and everything, and then I'll put the top on. So I don't get it too close to the edges because we don't want it to totally squirt out the edges, and just use the tip to spread it around on the rubber. And now we're going to go ahead and get some on the wood. There we are. Okay, index marks together. This goes and like that, and I give it a squeeze. Okay, to finish doing the clamp, I'm going to use a 1.5 inch deck screw with a finish cupped washer. Should be able to drive it home. Just like so. So now it's mounted nice and solid. Okay, so as an insurance policy, in your diagram, you may see that I put extra screws, 3 extra screws. That's, just in case the glue happens to break or something like that, something crazy happens. I put 3 extra screws in, and that's what I'll do here, just in a pattern, and I'll pre-drill with the 1/8 inch. About a 1/2 inch from the edge. You can do it on the drill press. I guess, you know, down through the center with the shaft. I've just been able to do them by hand pretty well. Okay, and then these same 1.5-inch screws like I used in the center. And again, it's just a little extra insurance policy, and you know, it adds a little bit of mass too. And you want to drive them in to where they're flush. Oh, there we are. Okay, so here's the single, double, and I have my underlayment cut for this one. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the underlayment part. Okay, all I do is I just use the contact cement. You can use your cork cement. And I just do the typical contact cement each side. And then while it dries, give it some you know, contact and cure time. I use a rubber band to just hold it in place while it really sets firm and everything. And then I roll, that kind of whole thing. Okay. And again, I'm getting these measurements from using the ruler around, getting all the measurements, cutting it 1 inch. That's the thickness of the hockey puck, 2 inches here. And then start wrapping it with the yarn. Start wrapping it with the yarn like I showed around that mallet. So that's how we stack them. And it doesn't matter if it's hockey pucks stacked or wood discs, whatever it is that you're putting together. Okay. So that's a little bit of how that's all put together and all that. Now, to finish on a thought, finishing the handles. Again, you can stamp them with your name on them. I use a couple of different things. If I'm in a hurry and want to do it quick, I'll use the clear gloss, just straight right out of the can, or the polyacrylic, and I'll brush it on if I got more time. Just depends on what's going on. But yeah, either one of these to seal the handle all up real good. And if they want a rope on it or a leather twine on the end of it, go ahead and drill your hole about a 1/2 inch down, 3/16 hole, and put you a loop to hang from. So there's the thoughts on that. And again, my book has more detailed and precise instructions, especially when it comes to measurements and things like that. But here is the whole gong mallet Slovakian hockey puck idea. All right, so earlier in the video I talked about chimes and the Chime Hammer material that you can buy from MasterCard. Here is a 3-inch slug. This is an 1.5 inch diameter material by 3 inches. I have it all marked and centered and ready to go. It's centered on the vise. Everything's all good there. So I just have to bore a 1 inch deep hole right on my crosshairs. This is a 3/4 inch Forstner bit like we used on the hockey pucks earlier. And this material machines with the Forstner bit really well. You have to clear away a lot of shavings. So we're going to go to a depth, like I said, of 1 inch. and the Forstner bit is a 1/2 inch. So if I get to the top of it, so there's a 1/2 inch right there, and I just have to go, and I have my depth stop set on my drill press also. And there we are at my depth stop. There we are. Okay, I have the soft jaws, and I have a really thin piece of plywood to protect it on the vise. So there we are. It's just a matter of drilling the 1/8 inch through hole like we did on the hockey puck, and then using a countersink and countersinking for the screw on top once it's put through, countersinking through the top. All right, we did our 1/4 inch through hole. So now we're going to set up for our bevel. Our countersink bit is all set up in the drill press. There we are. We're all countersunk for our screw to go through into our handle. Again, just like the hockey puck. So all we got to do is clean up our ends, a little bit of bevel on the ends, and some acetone to smooth it out, and we're good.